his statement. And I now give the floor to the representative of the Syrian Arab Republic.
شكرا سيد الرئيس.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thank you for the efforts you have been making and for successfully conducting the work of the Security Council this month. Mr. President, my country, Syria, believes in the partnership with the United Nations and its member states. We believe in the promotion of bilateral and multilateral cooperation to support the efforts of the Syrian state to improve the living conditions and provide the basic services to Syrians. The Syrian government continues its constructive and positive engagement with development and humanitarian partners, and we are providing them with the necessary facilities and support. We have renewed the authorization to the United Nations to use the Bab al-Hawa crossing for 6 additional months until January 13. This was a sovereign decision because we believe in the need for the delivery of humanitarian assistance to Syrian civilians in need in northwest Syria. In addition, all our other approvals on Bab al-Salama and al-Ra'i crossings and other approvals on cross-line delivery continue. At the same time, the government continues to make every effort to promote the role of state institutions and ensure their efficiency, and in order to continue its administrative and economic reform and development. In order to uphold the constitution, Syrians headed to the polls on the 15th of July and elected their representatives at the People's Assembly. The elections were held under the supervision of an independent Supreme Judicial Committee that took all the necessary measures to ensure credible and transparent elections. The Syrian government continues to make every effort to facilitate the return of refugees and displaced persons. Indeed, hundreds have safely returned in recent days from Lebanon, and the necessary facilities were provided to them, which proves that the false propaganda spread by the West is anything but credible. Mr. President, despite the facilities provided by the Syrian government, the outcomes of its cooperation with the United Nations remain lacking. This is attributed to the hostile positions of some Western states, which continue to violate the international law and the provisions of the UN Charter through their illegal military presence. They are sponsoring terrorist groups and militias. They are looting our national wealth and imposing unilateral coercive measures. They are also politicizing humanitarian and development work and linking it to political conditions that seek to serve their own interests at the expense of the security, stability, and prosperity of the Syrian people. These hostile policies have severely damaged the UN's ability to implement its mandate, whether in terms of preserving or maintaining peace and security in the region and putting an end to Israel's aggression, or to provide humanitarian assistance, support Syrian resilience, and implement early recovery projects in key sectors indicated in Security Council resolutions, namely the sectors of health, education, water, electricity, and housing. In addition to demining and removal of explosive devices. This is an urgent need to facilitate the return of Syrians to their homes and land and ensure the safety and security of Syrians. Mr. President, a few days ago, the ESCWA issued its report on the effects of unilateral coercive measures on the Syrian Arab Republic. This report is an additional step to expose the disastrous impact of these illegal measures. It refutes the allegations spread by countries who have imposed such measures, such as those just provided by the representative of the United States. So this report is an additional step to expose the disastrous impact of such illegal measures. It refutes the allegations of those who have imposed them, even though the report focused on what it called the unintended effects of these measures, or overcompliance, which is only the tip of the iceberg. Overcompliance is not the real issue here. The very imposition of unilateral coercive measures is. The Western threats to impose sanctions on states and financial and commercial institutions is the real issue. This is the root cause of the problem. Unilateral coercive measures are a grave violation of the international law and the principle and purposes of the UN Charter, as well as our UN resolutions. They are a collective punishment imposed on peoples, depriving them from a dignified life and their basic rights. And this was confirmed by the Special Rapporteur on the negative impact of the unilateral coercive measures on the enjoyment of human rights at the Human Rights Council following her visit to Syria last year. Once again, Syria calls for the immediate, unconditional and full lifting of the unilateral coercive measures and providing predictable and sustainable funding to allow the United Nations to implement the humanitarian response plan, whose funding has not exceeded 20%. We also call for funding development projects of the UN strategic framework in Syria, which are yet to be funded for political reasons related to Western dictations and no-nos. In this vein, we stress that achieving sustainable development and the principle of leaving no one behind is not consistent with the policies of isolation, blockade, and collective punishment imposed on peoples through the unilateral coercive measures. Whoever is imposing UCMs are not committing to sustainable development and are not respecting human rights. Mr. President, the Syrian Arab Republic is committed to dialogue and diplomacy to settle political disagreements because we believe that constructive dialogue is the cornerstone of international relations. For this reason, we have positively engaged with different initiatives to improve our relations with other states, because we strongly believe that the interests of states are built on sound relations and are based on key principles, mainly mutual respect of the sovereignty, independence, and territorial unity, and fighting all threats to a state's security and stability to serve common interest away from any interference in states' internal affairs and foreign dictations and the imposition of foreign solutions. The Syrian Arab Republic stresses that any initiative in this regard should be based on clear foundations to ensure the right outcome, mainly the withdrawal of illegally present forces from Syrian territories and fighting terrorist groups which not only threaten security in Syria but also in neighboring countries. Mr. President, once again, Syria renews its commitment to a Syrian-led, Syrian-owned political process without any foreign interference, in line with the full respect of our sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. We stress that we will continue to cooperate and engage in dialogue with the Special Envoy. And we look forward to the success of the 9th round of the Constitutional Committee in Baghdad, in Iraq. We stress that ensuring stability in the region requires the three permanent Western states in the Security Council to retract their destructive policies and to adopt constructive approaches to fully respect the sovereignty, independence, unity, and territorial integrity of Syria, to end the occupation and illegal foreign military presence on Syrian territories, to fight terrorism and put an end to Israeli occupation, to the crimes of the Israeli occupation entity and its repeated attacks on Syria's territories, which threaten international and regional peace and security. Mr. President, in light of the allegations leveled by some on the parliamentary elections, my country, Syria, rejects all attempts to question such elections. Despite the difficult circumstances we are facing in Syria and we have faced for the past years, this constitutional requirement was respected and was held on time. The attempts by some to discredit this process or link it to frameworks that are not in line with the Syrian constitution is a disrespect to our sovereignty. It is a blatant interference in our internal affairs. It goes in line with the actions carried out by separatist militias and terrorist groups to prevent residents in areas under their control from practicing their electoral rights. With regards to the other allegations leveled by the representative of the American administration, they do not even deserve a response because they reflect a desperate attempt by the United States to distance itself from the outcomes of its hostile policies and violations of international law, which destabilize the region. His allegations seek to cover for the crimes of Washington's allies, namely Israel and separatist militias and terrorist groups. His attempts will not succeed in covering such crimes, and the position of his administration, which violates the international law. The representative of the U.S. administration leveled some accusations and allegations about the unilateral coercive measures, saying that they do not really affect the Syrian people, whereas such measures affect Syrians in their everyday life. They affect every parent that is trying to provide food on the table. They are affecting every mother who is trying to feed her children. They are affecting the recovery of the stability. They are affecting our development, our economic development. His justifications are just like his practices. They seek to cover for the violations of the Charter. The unilateral coercive measures are a violation of the Charter and a violation of international law, are a violation of human rights instruments. They are also a violation of the UN resolutions that we are adopting every single year on sanctions. Unilateral coercive measures are economic terrorism. This is a form of economic terrorism against countries targeted by Washington. This is a collective punishment of peoples that should be ended. Trying to justify them is only a lie. Thank you, Mr. President.
Я благодарю
I thank the representative of the Syrian